Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, and it's 200 episodes.
Yeah, I love that new opener. That surprised me. I wasn't prepared for that, so that was great.
Yeah, I just did that a little bit before the show. I'm like, well, we've got to do something to celebrate, so mixed it into the intro. But yeah,
I like it. I was going to get a bottle of champagne, as I mentioned pre-show, but I didn't get a chance to get out and get one. But this is not an endorsement, but I did bring a lemon drop martini from Cutwater, and we're going to open it right here.
Ooh, nice. Ooh, love that. We got a sparkly water, some bubbly. Here we go.
All right, cheers to us.
Well, maybe when you and Shekar are talking, I'll go grab a little wine. But until then, we have a really great episode planned of Deconstructing Data. Another interesting guest, our 200th guest. Actually, we haven't had 200 because we've had some repeat guests.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of really great guests. And it's interesting because people who've come on, I'm just hearing from their PR people they want to come back on. Like even from Lodame, they're like, hey, we'd like to come back on the show. And it's like, it's a great signal. People are getting a lot from the show, and thanks, David, for like getting out of your comfort zone and doing it.
Yeah, like I said when I posted on LinkedIn, thank you for forcing me to do this. It has obviously been a success. I think at 100 episodes we felt like it was a success, but 200 episodes is crazy. So almost 4 years worth.
Yeah. 4 years. Yes. Well, on that note, we are pleased to welcome, we've got Shekar Raman here. He's the co-founder and CEO of Birdzi Incorporated. Thank you for being here, Shekar.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm hearing all these amazing things about your show, so I'm super excited to be on here.
Well, awesome. Well, we're happy to have you here on this 200th episode, Shekar, and we'd love for you to kick it off for us and give our viewers and listeners a chance to get to know you a little bit and get to know a little bit about Birdzi. So love to hear your story, what led you to become co-founder and launch Birdzi, and tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing for your customers today.
Sure. Thanks for the question. So I'll do the quick, what we call the bird's eye view. Background, I'm an electrical engineer, have really nothing to do with grocery retail. Worked out of college in something called the Human Genome Project that a lot of your listeners may have heard of. As a research engineer, really using neural networks and machine learning. This is back in the early 90s, and then in Bell Labs in speech recognition. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth against machine learning and neural networks. And then moved to Wall Street for a bunch of years. And then one day, this is purely accidental, my daughter came to me when she was in elementary school with a Invention Day project that she needed my help on. And of course, like a good dad, I said, I'll help out. We happened to find ourselves in a supermarket with a list from my wife. I couldn't find half the things in the store. And so my daughter looks at her helpless dad and says, maybe we should invent something that'll help shoppers locate products in the store. And that idea essentially became Birdzi, kind of give you the bird's eye view of the supermarket, so to say. But that's where we started. That's not what we do today. Today, we are really about understanding shopper behavior, specifically in the grocery vertical. We help a whole bunch of supermarkets make sense of their data and interact with shoppers in a highly personalized one-to-one manner and drive a lot of the insights and the uplift in their marketing systems.
I love that story. That's awesome. I love that your daughter inspired the business. That's amazing.
Well, a lot of these things, I think what I found is a lot of entrepreneurs wind up solving a problem that they have. And I think I resonated with her. I think she looked at my situation and like, this looks like a helpless dad. It would be really good if we could find his way around the supermarket. And I think the more I went around stores, I realized it was a problem. Although it was not a problem that retailers were willing to pay for, which is why we pivoted into more looking at data and helping them understand shopper behavior from data and learn how to deal with them in a much more personal manner. So
yeah. So I mean, and that's that's one of our topics, I guess, AI-driven personalization in grocery retail. So I'd love to sort of dig into that. So maybe you can help us get some context on that one.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we found over the years here is that if you think about how the supermarkets evolved over the last 50, 60 years, it used to be the corner store in your neighborhood. You walked in, the store owner knew you by name, knew your kids, he knew what you want, what you bought, what you liked. And as the supermarket evolved and became these 20 aisle stores where you drove your own cart and picked up your own products, uh, the shopper became abstracted from the actual grocery owner. And I think what has happened over time is that there's lots of data that's being generated by the shopper that was not properly leveraged to be able to fill that gap and that personalized, meaningful interaction. And what we're finding today with the technologies, with the cloud and AI, is that this is now a reality where you can actually understand individual shopper behavior. You can actually interact with them in a highly personal manner. And that's kind of where we've seen the industry slowly evolve to. And of course, what's happened in the last couple of years with generative AI and all the capabilities. And it seems like, today is different from yesterday. And every day there's new things happening. The possibilities of being able to engage with shoppers in a one-to-one fashion and a more meaningful fashion, really, uh, is now a reality. And that's really where Birdseye is focused on. Is about how do we use these latest cutting-edge technologies that sit on top of your data and then help you activate that data and have more deeper, meaningful relationships with your shoppers.
So let's dig into that a little more, because I'm that guy that's lost in the store. I know where the couple of items are that I want. But if my wife ever sends me to the store, I'm just wandering,
Right.
looking for stuff. So talk to me about like solving this, and talk to me a little bit more about like, how you foresee that improving.
Right. So I think if you think about the shopper journey, there's really three stages, right? There's the planning stage where you have a mission for your trip. You're going to the supermarket. It's one of the few retail locations where you go not for the intent of browsing, but with the intent of shopping, right? Most other specialty retails, you may not necessarily go in and buy in anything, but if you're going to the supermarket, you're going there because you have a very specific aim.
Mhm.
So the goal is first to how do you inspire that trip, right? Is there anything that you can do to inspire that trip? Because we all know that if you go to a supermarket, you're not walking out of one thing, you're walking out of a cart full of things.
Mhm.
So that's the first opportunity for the retailer to basically be able to understand and anticipate a shopper's needs and figure out how to anticipate and predict behavior and then use that as a trigger to potentially expand the basket while they're in the store, right? And so you have the planning phase, you have the execution phase, and then you have the post purchase phase, which is now that you know what I did, how are we going to use that information to drive that feedback cycle and then build on that relationship? And that's kind of how we think about shopping is, what can you do from a predictive perspective? What can you do while they're in the store engaging? And then what do you learn post purchase that can be used to inspire the next trip?
So is that all sort of managed through like a shopper club, or an app, or something like that as well?
Right. So if you think about how most supermarkets work, that have some kind of loyalty rewards
Mhm.
program,
Yep.
the goal of the rewards program is really to incentivize you to identify yourself in every trip because you're collecting some kind of points. You're maybe getting the low price because you're a member, right?
Mhm.
And what that really does is you are creating a data stream now. And that data stream is what is so powerful if the retailer can leverage that data stream properly to really understand intent and then execute on that intent and then understand the impact of their campaigns. Hey, did this promotion work for this customer? Did it not work? Do we need to tweak it? Are this customer, is their life stage of this customer changing because they suddenly are buying diapers and they never bought diapers before, which means they have a baby? I mean, what are we doing with these signals? And that's really what the Birdseye platform is built for, is to understand these signals and then drive engagement by leveraging those signals and trying to predict what the next purchase looks like and really understand opportunities of how to maximize that information to drive bigger baskets.
Yeah, as a data guy, those are great signals, and I'm like,
Right,
all
exactly.
excited about that. Yeah, for sure.
So one of the things that we have been able to do, David, is that traditionally, and it's not like personalization is a new topic. I think people have been understood the importance of it for a long time. It's just that it was very difficult and very laborious to execute. Especially if you're a smaller retailer or regional retailer, you never quite had the technology or the people to be able to look through that data to deliver and create these campaigns. What we've really done is kind of sped that up from what used to take 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks for a team of 5, 6 people to a couple of hours now to execute and run. So that speed has completely changed the game for a lot of retailers in terms of how they're able to respond to shopper needs. Because 1 week goes by, I could have a change. I could go to the doctor today, and the doctor tells me, "Well, you got to eat more fiber and more protein." And I change my diet and I change what I shop next time I go to the supermarket. Question is, how long does it take the retailer to understand that shift in behavior and change how they communicate to me? And that's really where we feel where the power of our platform comes in, is to be able to see those signals in near real time and respond to it. And we've been able to successfully deliver really exciting results for the retailer in terms of basket increases, retention metrics, which are super important. Because what happens in supermarket grocery is that, especially if you have a loyalty program, you understand that your top 20% of your shoppers typically generate about 65 to 70% of your revenue. So retaining shoppers is like super important. So making sure you are on top of that data, understanding who your core shoppers are, and making sure you're addressing them is really where the strength of. So we have a platform called Whisper, which allows you to do that one-to-one personalization from using first-party data.
So this is awesome. Help us understand a little bit more about like results. You touched on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always interested, especially when we're talking about implementing AI in situations like what improvements are we seeing? What is the return on the investment? And you gave us like a little bit of a hint that of what the improvements can look like. What is a typical retailer supermarket seeing in improvement in sales, employing some your platform, for example?
Yeah. So I'll caveat this by saying, obviously, the retailers, the results may vary based on the level of engagement with the retailer, but in some cases, we're seeing about 55% engagement, which means of the audience being targeted, 55% are engaging. We're seeing basket increases of between 17 to 30% on a trip. We're seeing retention metrics go up by about 50 to 60%. So which means if you're retaining 60% of your shoppers, you're now retaining 75% of your shoppers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these are metrics that can vary based on where the store is. Is it urban? Is it suburban? Right? How much competition there's around? So there's a lot of variable. But Birdzi's got a retail deployment across the country, so we kind of have stores across really the entire nation. We're seeing fantastic. One of the huge surprises that we saw, and looking at it now is not so surprising, is incredible email engagement rates. Right? Email is really a platform where we now get tons and tons of email, lots of them spam, and we've actually built filters now to filter out meaningless emails. But we're seeing incredible engagement on the email front, where people are now habituated and looking for these personalized emails, which have their deals for the week or the deals for the month, right? So the email open rates have really skyrocketed. Email engagement click-through rates, in the double digits. Customer retention as high as 89%. We've seen overall item additions, so average of 1.2 to 1.5 items added to the basket per trip, which for a retailer is huge when you think about it. Because at the end of the day, the only way you grow revenue is you either get you get more shoppers in, you get shoppers to buy more items, or you get shoppers to buy the more higher priced items. Those are the only three ways you can actually increase revenue, right? And those are really the three key metrics we drive. We're looking at how many more shoppers are we able to get in, how many more items are we able to add to their basket, and then how many of them are able to buy items that they never bought before because it's in the vicinity of what they've been interested in. And we've been able to grow that basket, like I said, about 17% over time.
Amazing results. That's awesome.
Definitely. Good one. And I think we could probably drive it into personalization and grocery retail and many industries even more. There's just so many problems with it. It's like something so simple we've been doing as marketers for so long, but there's still a lot of errors with it. You always see things being personalized incorrectly. So yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement there, but in the meantime, we should transition on to breaking data barriers for retail innovation. Can you kick us off on that, Shekar?
Yeah, and I think this is one of those fields, David, I feel is, if you're so close to the trees, you kind of miss you don't see the forest, because
Mhm.
what's traditionally happened in retail, at least supermarket retail, is that departments within retail have been very siloed. Like, people in marketing are just working on marketing. People in merchandising are working just on merchandising, supply chain, logistics, warehouse stuff, right? And the supermarket retail, especially because it's a 24/7, 365 days a year business, people really don't have the time to step back and see what's the big picture. You're so steeped into it. So
Mhm.
traditionally what's happened is data has become siloed in retail, and so there's no interconnectivity between different departments. And that's created a very weird problem. What's happened is legacy applications have become specialized in dealing with that data. So
Mhm.
now connecting different data silos has become challenging, because each application is using its data in its own way, and it's become very proprietary.
Yep.
So trying to get a broad view of that has really become a huge challenge. And for retail to really get on the AI bandwagon, as well as I do, data is the new oil, right? If your
Mhm.
data isn't in a place where it can be used by AI is not going to do much for you. And that's kind of where we see that, we've helped retailers kind of unify that data. They haven't been able to do it in-house, so we typically uh, get feeds of their data, and we've built an entire data lake and data warehouse where we unify all those elements, and then we're able to, on top of that, enable some cool AI functionality on top of that, right? And that has been a massive help for a lot of our retailers. They depend on us today for their day-to-day analytics, insights that are being driven off of that, because internally they're still siloed in their operation, but they're able to utilize the Birdzi platform to unify their entire data set, right? And
Yep.
that's kind of where I see the new power. It's almost like having the brain and the eyes and the hands all now connected in one body. They used to be all separate in different places, and now
Mhm.
you can now act in more cohesion and achieve a goal, right? So it's not just, I think today it's not just about insights, it's about action. It's about taking decisions and taking action. And I
Yeah.
think for the longest time, we've just been happy with getting insights and dashboards and BI, right? Without the ability to act on that data. But I think those days are changing. And with what AI is doing and what agents are doing, you want to be able to act on that data as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that data silo problem is a problem that exists across many industries. We've seen it across the board, and the bigger the company, the bigger the problem. And they all think, oh, we're such a big company, we have all this data. But that data silo is the barrier to really making an effective use of that data and being able to take action on it, just like you're saying, and being able to use it in an AI atmosphere where that data can be useful in taking action for you. And so that's a very common problem. And it becomes your problem, right? Because while you have the ability to solve this problem for customers in the retail industry, first they need to get past that barrier. And
Right.
so, in order for them to get past that barrier, a lot of times it's like, okay, they don't know how to approach it, so it becomes your problem. You have to, do it for
Correct.
them. And that's why so many of these data collaboration platforms exists, is to try to help resolve those problems as well.
Correct. And one of the things we are also noticing, David, is that uh, the interconnectivity of the data also helps the retailer think of their business more holistically. Otherwise they've been thinking in terms of, hey, okay, what are we doing in marketing? What are we doing in merchandising? Instead of thinking more holistically as a business. And I think when your data is connected, you just have a bigger and broader view about how to move your business forward or what's impacting your business. When data is not connected, insights are isolated and they're rarely connected together to create a more unified solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to ask this question of a lot of people. I like to sort of look into the future, and I think you're a great person to ask this question too, with all of your experience. And so, looking into the future, where are we going with this? Like, what? And I'll preface this: if you've heard of some of my podcasts in the past, you've heard me say early on in the podcast. Again, this was almost 4 years ago. We did this 200 episodes. We predicted on this podcast the many platforms that exist today that you call vibe coding. Like, we had a conversation and we're like, hey, yeah, I think someday you're just going to be able to tell an application to build a website for you or write some software for you, and it's just going to do it for you. And here we are today. You can do that. And there's tons of AI platforms, and you can just use Cloud Code or whatever it is. So let's look into the future. I'd like to be able to, like 50 or 100 episodes from now, be able to say, hey, I had this conversation with Shekar and he predicted where we are going to be with respect to AI-driven personalization in retail. So talk to me about where you see the future in this.
Well, I think the first thing I'll tell you is that the rate at which things are changing, you may not have to wait 50 or 100 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right. I think the pace at which things are changing 2 weeks from now is maybe a reality. Yeah. But I mean, who knows how? I mean, being in technology for as long as I've been, I've never seen things change as fast as it has. Right. Yeah. I think most of us are bamboozled by the pace at which these things are changing and trying to wrap our heads around what can be. I think a couple of things I can tell you that we can see is definitely happening, right? Which is a more unified interface into your enterprise, right? Which is, I think the silos are breaking down. I think you're going to have a central brain that runs the outfit. Some people like to call it Skynet, but I think you're going to have something like a Skynet that runs your business, that has access to all aspects of your business, and you have one central operating center through which you can operate your entire business that's aware of all the things that's happening. I think it's going to start today with a intelligence layer where you're getting insights and decision inputs, but you still have to make the decisions. But I think where it will wind up with is an ability for you to put some guardrails around actions to be taken and have those actions to be taken automatically, right? Within some guardrails that you've set. I think that's kind of where I see, and I think this is not more than 6 months to a year away, honestly. Now, is everybody going to adopt it? I think that's where the fear factor comes in, right? Which is, I think some organizations are positioning themselves to take advantage of that future and that capability, because I think capabilities today are way ahead of preparedness. I think the capabilities that exist in the market's not really prepared to take advantage of all of that. But you're going to have some retailers who have the foresight and are preparing themselves to take advantage of those capabilities. And those retailers are definitely going to have an edge in the future. So I think you're going to have the ability to automate a lot of these tasks. And I think the focus is going to become on human interaction. I think where we're going to go is, I think people skills, all the soft skills about customer care and human to human interaction are going to become premium as we go along. And I think a lot of these amazing visionaries have already talked about, how the humanities is going to become such an important part of our future, because technology is going to be able to do a lot of the mundane things. And it's really, we're going to value people to people interaction. So I think that's kind of where I see, within a year or two. And then I think the other part that I see is, there's been a lot of talk about agentic commerce, right? And while I think it's got a role to play, I don't think it will be as big as what I think people are making it out to be, because I think people like to be involved in decisions when it comes to buying stuff. The agents may execute it on their behalf, but they still want to decide what's to be bought, right? So I think there will be a planning phase that is so intrinsic to our human nature that we don't want to let go of. So I think it's kind of like you're going to have a pilot behind a plane, even though there's autopilot on it, right? It's just that there is that last mile that you still want control of. So that's the immediate thing that I can see and happening in retail is more automation, more interconnectedness, and more big picture thinking in terms of how to grow your business. And there's this great book by Dan Heath called Upstream, right? I don't know if you read it, but it's really about upstream analysis, right? So the book starts with a very graphic picture of kids drowning in a river and people jumping in to save them, and there's more and more kids coming down the river, and then they realize that there's somebody actually throwing the kids into the river a couple of miles up, so they decide to go upriver and stop that person from throwing the kids into the river, right? And I think so much of what we're doing today is downstream analytics and downstream action. I think where data really leads you is really how to do this upstream intervention, right? So I think retail is going to become about, I hate to quote this movie, but Minority Report, right? It's going to preempt the action and understand and be able to either intervene or, predict what you're likely to do. That's kind of where I see things going, but that can only happen if all the pieces of retail are connected well, right? Which means data has to be clean. It has to flow neatly between systems and accessible to a central brain.
And you can do that from a bird's eye, right?
Yeah, that's what we're attempting to do. I mean, it's not an easy problem. So I think there's going to be obviously lots of players, but I think having lots of players is what makes innovation go faster, because you're always trying to be better than the other, right? And then that drives the edge in terms of what you can push the envelope, so to say.
Very cool. Well, we got a long comment. I didn't want to cover anyone's face when they were talking, so I thought I'd come back to it when I could talk about it. But Courtney's saying, David, absolutely. Jessie, if an offer, message, or recommendation isn't relevant to a customer's needs, habits, or timing, it becomes easy to ignore. True personalization isn't about sending more communication. It's about delivering meaningful experiences that feel helpful, timely, and valuable. That's what builds engagement, loyalty, and long-term trust. Absolutely, Courtney. And if there's anyone else watching, I see there've been about on and off 15 to 20 of you on YouTube, about 5 or so on LinkedIn, and then we've got X going. So you're all here lurking. We want to know what your thoughts are. Where are you tuning in from? What do you do? And join us in the conversation, and we'll pull it up on the screen. And if there's any good questions or anything, we'll try to pause and read them for podcasts, but otherwise they'll just keep flipping up on the screen. On that note, I'll transition us into our third topic, which is data-driven retail loyalty programs. If anyone watching has any thoughts on this, plug that in the comments. But in the meantime, Shekar, can you kick us off on that?
Yeah, and I think the comment from Courtney was kind of timely, because, I think loyalty for the longest time has just been about signing up for a program, getting some points, and being part of some clubs, right? And I think that definition of loyalty is changing. I think loyalty is something that you earn, and I think the real currency for loyalty is trust. I think especially in supermarket retail, it's about do you really understand your shopper, right? I mean, I've been shopping with a store for 5 years, and if I'm still getting offers for Oreo cookies, and I've been on a sugar-free diet for 4 years, what's that telling me about how much my supermarket understands me, right? So I think when I think about data-driven retail loyalty programs, it's, are you using the data that your loyal shoppers are generating to truly build meaningful relationships and value for them? And I think that's, we're finding that retailers who do that drive much more stronger loyalty, and the stickiness becomes higher, because it's kind of like if I go to a restaurant and the owner of the restaurant knows me, knows my preferences, knows my allergens, knows my preferences of food, and is able to come in and treat me on a personal level, it just gives me a completely different level of relationship, as opposed to a place where I have to go and explain myself every single time. It's just the pain of doing that is going to keep me from switching loyalties, right? And I think that's kind of where supermarkets have to go. What we've seen is that it drives an incredible increase in retention. Triple digit in some cases, about 16-20% increase in trips per month. about 23% increase in spend per month. So these are all factors when you think about the human side of it. Once you trust somebody, you rather do business with them. It's so much easier. Once I find a mechanic that I can trust, I'd rather go back to the mechanic every single time, even if it's going to charge me a few bucks more, because the trust factor is what is ultimately valuable to humans, right? And when your data is able to inform you, then you have to figure out how to leverage that data to build that trust, because that's ultimately your currency, right? And that's why people will stick to you, because they just trust you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think trust is crucial in building relationships with brands and people, right? And I think that a lot of brands overlook that, and they lose the customer in the exact way that you said. You're sending them offers for things that you already bought, or things that you don't buy, or things that are so far away from what you would normally buy. They don't know you. They haven't built a relationship with you. They're clearly showing they don't, that you can't trust them in that sense to understand what your needs are. And we say that about any business. When you're doing business, you're doing business with people, and you're expecting a certain level of trust, and you don't do business with companies and businesses that you don't trust. And so when those loyalty programs do things that, sort of lose that trust relationship with the consumer, they'll lose the customers. And I think that a lot of companies have done that over the years, not truly understanding the value of their own loyalty program, or their own, newsletter, even, email lists.
Correct.
They email you too often. My wife was telling me about, she bought something from, I don't even remember what it was. I think it was some online jewelry retailer, and she bought a gift for somebody. And after that, they started emailing her literally like 3 to 5 times a day. Like, how many times do you need to be reminded about this brand because you bought something from them once, right? And so how quickly will you unsubscribe when that happens? That's just
and once you lose a customer, they're gone, right?
Yeah. They've managed to build a horrible relationship with their customers by doing that.
Yeah. And what we find is you need some proxies to be able to measure trust, because trust is obviously an abstract thing, right? How do you know somebody trusts you, right? So you're looking for signals in the data which act as a proxy for that trust. So with supermarket grocery, where you have so many categories and so many products that people can buy, it's very different from a shoe store, where the only thing you can buy is shoes, right? And you're going to go only so often. But in supermarket, so what we've done is we've come up with a think of it like a FICO score for a shopper, right? It kind of measures the shopper's loyalty towards the retailer, right? And it understands life stage of the shopper, so it's relative to that. Like, it knows that, hey, if you're a shopper with 3 kids, a family with 3 kids, you're going to spend X dollars, and if you're a senior, retired, you're going to spend a different amount of dollars. Now, both could be loyal. Just because you spend less doesn't mean you're less loyal, right? So I think being able to understand that in relation to that is critical for you to be able to understand loyalty and use some of these data elements as proxies. And so the Birdzi platform uses what we call it a KIC score, KIC score. We use that as a proxy for loyalty to measure, is that going up, going down? Is it going down because of change in life stage? In which case, we put you in a different bucket, so we can kind of measure your trust factor within the life stage that you're in.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, it's so important. It's not a loyalty program if you're pushing people away, right?
Right. Exactly. And you can't buy it either, right? So
yeah,
It's a disloyalty program if you're pushing
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all of your knowledge on that topic of data-driven retail loyalty programs. Is there anything else you'd want to add before I transition us on to tech stack?
I mean, the only thing I can tell you is, I mean, in terms of proof points, what we've seen is that we've been able to successfully, most retailers think of their loyalty program in terms of tiers. They build out tiers of loyalty, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, whatever it is, right? You have it in frequent flyer programs, and we're all trying to become platinum or 1K or club, whatever it is that you fly.
Yeah.
And so I think retailers also obviously have that. And so one of the ways we measure effectiveness of the loyalty program or the personalization you're looking is, are you successfully migrating shoppers up your tiers, right? So you look at three key things, right? One is, what is my retention? So when new shoppers come in, how many do I retain after 90 days? How many are still shopping? Right. Number two is, what's the velocity at which a new shopper becomes what I would call a loyal shopper, right? Who's coming back again and again. Whether, let's say you got a spend threshold that you're trying to hit. And number three, year over year, how many shoppers am I retaining across my entire shopper base, right? So those are three very simple metrics that pretty much everybody can look at and look at the health of their business. Am I doing good in these three departments? If I'm not, then let me look one level deeper. Why is it not happening? Right. So I think we start thinking of that, how to dig into your data and kind of do the Sherlock Holmes episode, dive in, let's figure out exactly what's going on, because the clues are all there on the data.
The clues are all there. We just need to really dig in. Yeah, that's a good
sure.
takeaway for everyone. Dig into your data. You have a lot of low-hanging fruit there.
Yeah, that applies to any business. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then our final topic that we ask all the guests the 200th time, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack? And I will have to say, 4 years of this, we've seen sort of like an evolution. Like in the beginning, before ChatGPT, there were fewer AI tools. And I think there's some that we hear consistently, probably HubSpot and Slack. But yeah, I don't know, any sort of like, I guess, reflections on tech stack from you, David, before we hand it over to Shekar?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely, to your point, it's definitely evolved. And like we've said over the past, few months, we've been saying, like, we've actually been telling people, please share whatever AI tools you have, because there's so many new tools that come out like daily, like probably hundreds, if not thousands a day, that no one can keep up with them all, and we all have our basics. And, I personally like Claude. That's my favorite, on the AI side, but there's so many other like tools and things that people are using for various different things, whether it be for managing projects and managing your day to day, or advertising or marketing or whatever it is. Like, there is so many different types of tools out there that we always just like to have people share what they can, because it's inspiring. Like, we listen to you, Shekar, and we hear all of what you've shared with us today, and your knowledge and your background and your experience in data and retail. And it's like, oh, okay, and oh, I'm using this tool to manage my day to day, and it's like, oh, okay, well, if that really works for him, I want to try it too. And that's kind of the feedback that we get from our viewers and listeners. It's like, it's inspiring to hear what people are using in their day to day. And everyone, finds it helpful. And quite frankly, I do too. I learn something new every day on this show. So,
yeah. And I think from a personal tech stack perspective, I'd say there's two things that I've been using off late that have completely made a huge difference to me. I think first one is Notebook LM by Google. I use it all the time to summarize documents, ask questions of documents, point it to a folder on my Google Drive and ask questions. And the other one, I think, was also launched by Google recently, just a couple of weeks ago, is an app called Hux, Huxe. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
But you can connect it to your email in your calendar and a bunch of other things, and it'll kind of summarize the day for you with a 5-minute podcast in the beginning of the day. And I found it super useful. It tells me, hey, here's emails you need to pay attention to. Here's meetings that are conflicting. You got to figure out which one to jump. So it's a quick 5-minute summary. And I've also added in, little bits. Tell me if something's going on in retail and AI, quickly summarize that. So I got while I'm morning, getting ready for my day and shaving or whatever, and I'm, just playing the Hux podcast and just get caught up for the day. So I found a few productivity tools. Notebook LM, of course. I use both Claude. Although I got to say, personally, I trust Claude with creating documents and a lot of the technical stuff, and I use OpenAI for the general research stuff. And then internally, we have a tool that we built called Ask Kia. Kia is our bird. It's our parrot bird that represents Birdzi. And Ask Kia is our generative BI interface, which is connected to all the data that we host. So we're able to use that on a day-to-day basis, I mean, pretty much all the time, to do lots of analysis, lots of insights, decisioning, and how we can help our customers grow their business. Apart from that, I mean, internally within the Birdzi platform, we have a CDP. It's all built cloud native, of course. We're sitting on one of the big 3 cloud providers out there. And Whisper is our personalization engine. We have a tool called Journey, which is kind of, think of it like a customer lifecycle management tool. So lots of cool technologies internally that we wind up using, just even internally within Birdzi, to do analysis and execution. And then the other piece that I found super interesting from a personal perspective is, we use Monday.com to manage all our projects, and with the new AI agents, it's become super powerful. We use Otter for record all our meetings. We use Slack, of course, as a central place how we communicate with everything that we do within the company. And now, because we're a cloud native company, we have to manage costs. We use a lot of agents to monitor our cloud usage and our token usage, to be able to let us know, when we're hitting thresholds, when we're hitting budget. Because, some of these things the rate of adoption has just skyrocketed, right? So being able to manage your token budget, what you're spending on it, has become all super important, and it's impossible to do it manually. So you actually need AI agents, and we use a framework called a LangChain and LangSmith and LangGraph to really, do all our agentic orchestration layer. So, and who knows, David, where we'll be 2 weeks from now,
Right.
Who knows?
Once there's physical AI, God knows what happens, right?
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I appreciate you sharing all of that. And I've taken some notes. I hadn't heard of Hux before, so I'm going to check that out for sure. I've been wanting Microsoft to do something like that with Copilot, but their Copilot, I think, is useless.
I just read an article today, not to add to the bashing, but
yeah,
I think some number that only 3% of the people who use Copilot are actually paying for it, or something like that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's terrible. It's ridiculous.
Whereas Notebook-LM was free with your Google subscription. It's an amazing tool.
Yeah,
Right.
It's amazing, right? So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'll throw one out there just because Hux reminded me of Perplexity's podcast, which I think I'd mentioned on here once before, maybe twice, whatever. Perplexity has this podcast. It's their daily podcast, which is pretty cool. And it's basically, I think in 8 minutes, they summarize the top news in a podcast format. And it's all AI driven. Like there's 2 or 3 hosts that converse kind of like we are. But there's no real people. It's completely AI. And it does a really good job. It's like when you listen to it, it's a video, it's an audio podcast, not video, but you'd never know listening to it that it's AI. Like that's how good it is.
Yeah. And the other thing I tell people is getting a dog changed my life, because I could start listening to podcasts on my walk now.
Yeah.
So, maybe you should get a dog so you can listen to podcasts while you walk your dog. Change your life, because it's quiet time, right? You're thinking about nothing. And I think if you're a founder out there listening, one of the things that I found super helpful is being able to exposing yourself to multiple fields and multiple topics, because your brain then gets, it's firing on all cylinders. You're connecting things and connecting the dots, and you don't know, you could be listening to one thing, like this upstream. He's talking about really organizational behavior and changing, and I'm thinking, how can I use that in data, right? And it's, I think, exposing yourself and listening to things like what you're talking about, I think, is really the difference between people who stay stagnant and people who are just moving constantly.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. I've read that about just walking, and whether it's just walking and engaging your mind while you're walking, or listening to a book or listening to a podcast or whatever it is while you're walking, it does something to your brain and engages your brain in a different way and makes you a lot more receptive to information, and you become more innovative and all of that. So yeah, it's all good. And I'll stick a PSA out there, since you mentioned everybody should get a dog. Yeah, go to your nearest shelter and adopt a dog.
Exactly. Totally. I mean, I have a dog that's it's a rescue as well. We didn't get him from adopted him. So yeah, absolutely. That was one of my things my daughter insisted on. I want a dog, but I wanted to be from a shelter. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Or a cat. You can adopt a cat. We adopted a cat from the Humane Society.
Awesome.
So whatever your pet preference. But on that note, while you were both talking earlier, I ran and got a little wine. So cheers to Deconstructing Data's 200th episode. Shaker, you really made it. Better take a drink or it's bad luck, right?
Yep.
But on that note, I'll go ahead and close us out, and we'll see you backstage, Shaker. And thank you, Birdzi, for the congratulations on the 200 episode. Just saw that comment come in.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I get to. That feels very special. So appreciate it.
I'm glad.
Well, thank you so much, Shaker. Yeah, we really appreciate you joining us on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for being. So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lezak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Yo.